Hey everybody, Keisha here, and today I am here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin,
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking, and here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the CARES Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: a house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city, house, or state without permission, or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the CARES Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the CARES Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate, and we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations, and thank you for all the support, and we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the CARES Project podcast. And today we have with us again Mary Knight. We are going to be talking a little bit about, well, I mean, a lot about the power dynamic, but I will let you ladies first and introduce yourself and just give us a little bit about the power dynamic.
Well, yeah. Hi, as Dale said, I'm Mary Knight, and I am a former sex worker and madam. I've been retired now for about 14 years, and I have been with my current husband for 11 years. So I left that life behind, and now I am a best-selling author, and I'm a dating and relationship coach. And mainly my focus is talking about masculine and feminine energy and how men and women are different. Right? We are very, very different. And we cannot have successful relationships and interactions when, we as women, we think that men are doing it wrong because they're not acting like us. And then men cannot have successful interactions with women when they think that women are doing it wrong because they're not acting like men. And part of what's going on with all of this is it creates this weird power dynamic in a marriage. And often how this plays out, unfortunately, is with a low sex, no sex marriage because no one is being the man and no one is being the woman.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to be the same, and there has to be polarity. There has to be sexual polarity for there to be sexual attraction.
Yes, yes, it does because I agree. Because what we're seeing here is there's a lot of convergence on trying to say that they have men and women have the same roles. So they're basically all trying to stand on the same pedestal when there's two pedestals, one for men and one for women. But they're all trying to fight on the same space. But if they stood on separate pedestals, there'd be enough room for everybody and we'd grow and develop much better. But, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just agreeing. Just agreeing. Yes, yes, there's plenty of room for everybody. And, I find I'm so much happier when I'm not trying to take on a masculine role, because it's just so much more relaxing and feels so much more natural when I let my husband be the man.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that should be the way it should go. Because, like I always tell my daughter, I'm like, you don't want me to treat you like a man. You don't, right? And what no woman should want to be treated like a man. You don't. You want to be treated like a woman, right? With respect, but like a woman.
I do, and I think that it's been so diluted about what all of that actually means. What do we even mean anymore when we say that? Excuse me, because I was born in the mid '60s, and I was raised in a pretty traditional family. Both my mom stayed at home, and my dad went to work. And even with that, though, because of all the stuff that was going on in our culture at that time, there was a lot of confusion and a lot of different messages that I know that I was getting. And because my dad wanted to be a good dad and my mom wanted to be a good mom, they were just kind of going along with some of this cultural messaging and wanting to be loving and wanting to be open. They didn't really take a firm stand, even though that's the way they were living their lives, was very traditional. So I did have a lot of, kind of mixed messages growing up myself, like a lot of children of the '70s did. It's like I'm supposed to, I was supposed to want a career. I was supposed to want, and I never did. I never wanted that. I just wanted to be a mom. Just want to get married and have kids. And I know it just sounds so, it's like that's what I wanted. And now for the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I have to apologize for that. Not that I ever did, but people are like, yeah, that's right. That's the right thing. You were onto something.
Yes, and that's one of the things that we were told is that you had to women had to have careers. They This is one of the things that ended up changing quite often is that they said that women didn't have to be in the home and in fact they were shamed for doing it, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't like they were given a choice. They were like, okay, if you don't do this, then you suck. And that's really not the message that should have been put there. It should have been like, well, that's a respectable thing because when I was growing up, I mean, it was women that stayed home were shamed. they were literally shamed. They were like, "Oh, you're just a housewife." What do you mean? Like, you know what I mean? So is that
Just a housewife. What do you do all day? You have you're in your feather high-heeled slippers with your feet up eating bonbons, right? That's what a housewife does. But well, in our neighborhood or where I grew up, and I grew up in Louisiana and Texas, so it was more conservative than a lot of other states. And my mom was never shamed for staying home, but I was certainly kind of looked at like, oh, what are you going to study in college? And I was like, well, I don't know. It was that was not. Uh, I was considered to be, oh, you're so smart though. You're so smart. So I was considered to be lost, like I was a lost soul because I didn't want to go to college.
yeah, and what people ended up failing to realize, there was a lot of manipulation that was done for that, because the way the economy came out after the war was done, artificially, because before that there was a big depression before the war happened, right? And then the war happened, and then things were great, and then life changed, and so women were sitting at home and not doing as much, because a lot of traditionally women would have businesses that they did, and they would work with their children, and they would do work at home and generate money. Now they could stick up their feet, but it's like, what is it? My grandmother used to say that the idle hands and idle feet, like that's basically the devil's playground. So you're gonna
Hmm.
have unrest if the kids are grown and you're sitting at home doing nothing, right? You'd be like, why am I here?
Yeah, but my kids are grown and gone, and I'm a grandma, and it's just me and my husband and our house, and a dog, and it's like I always have something to do around this dang house. I mean, come on. Landscaping and just well, I do like to decorate and paint. So I always have some kind of project going on here. So I don't know how I used to do it with kids. I don't know how I got anything done with a house full of kids.
But some people weren't doing anything. Like, it's what I'm saying. Like, I've talked to people, and some of the people weren't doing much, right? Not everybody would do that. Not everybody could afford to do it, and some people don't like doing nothing, because, I mean, but there was still
Yeah.
that pressure to go out and do that, and now you really can't afford it anymore. But let's kind of circle. Okay, we're gonna say something.
No, no, I was agreeing with you. Yeah.
So let's kind of circle back, because now we have this whole idea of men and women are competing, um, in the same areas, in a lot of the same areas, and that's not normally the way relationships normally work. And now we have the power dynamic, and with your experience, I'm sure that you can come in and talk. You mentioned about the sexless marriages and so forth. This is a huge power issue and a control issue. And I want to hear what what, even in your coaching, what have you heard people say about this?
Well, there's a couple of different schools of thought. One is that a woman, in a marriage, that she's intentionally withholding sex as a power play. And I think that is not as common as people like to think. Because what I'm seeing happening is that there's just a lack of sexual tension and sexual polarity in the relationship because of what I said at the top of the show, where is women are acting like men, men are acting like women. And they're doing it not necessarily because it feels good, but just because that's the way that we've been taught. And so they're just lost, and then they blame each other, because I know that some people in certain communities, they blame women, right? They say, oh, it's a power play, you're holding out, you're playing games. Oh, now that you got what you wanted, the house, the car, the kids, now you've got what you wanted, so now the legs are closed, right? And I'll tell you, it's not any woman's fantasy to live in a sexless, passionless marriage. There's something going on. And I do believe it is, again, that lack of polarity. That if a woman is feeling turned on and feeling open to a man, She wants to surrender. But if he is not in his masculine, there's no masculine presence in that relationship. There's nothing for the feminine to surrender to. And I think that's what's happening. And it's not that these men are weak or they're bad people. It's that they think they're doing the right thing by hesitating, by questioning, by asking permission. That their desire is more of a question than an expression of, hey, I want you. They're constantly asking permission. Hey, is it okay? Is it okay? And if that's not masculine energy, right? Masculine energy isn't about, dominating someone and taking control in a negative way or in a thoughtless way. It's about being present, being grounded, and reading the room, and expressing your desire. But that's just not what I hear all the time in coaching calls. That's not what's happening. They're not doing that. Men are afraid to do that because they've been rejected so many times. And so it just creates this very strange dynamic. And then also we're not even talking about, hormonal changes that women go through with pregnancy, menopause, which are very real, very, very real. And there's such a lack of education on that men take it personally, their women's hormonal fluctuations, and then women think they're broken and something's wrong. And it just creates all this resentment. And so I think it's less about an intentional power play and more about just a general lack of anyone being willing, a lack of masculine leadership. I'll just say that. Let's just say it's the man's fault. No.
I know.
I'm being glib. I'm being glib. But it's like the men set the tone. The masculine sets the tone.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and it's not necessarily that they're always using the sex to be vengeful, but it's like, I'm not getting what I want, and it's like, why should you get what you want? So you get the man that's going in and he's not getting his needs met, she's not getting her needs met, then they have a problem. But then what is happening is the men are looking for the women to solve the problems, which I'm like, no, dude, no.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, don't get me wrong, there are some cases that women they're just next level and they're just choose to do wrong, but that's not most of the time, right? Most women want to get something in a certain way, and they want to get their needs met, but they don't know how to get it out of the man. They don't. Like, I watch women do this, and it doesn't get the right results, because then the man will just start getting angry in the way that she wants to get what she wants from him. But the man needs to be the one to deal with this and initiate it so that she will respond, because he's designed to be the leader and to speak by his actions. But when a man there is getting, he's getting inside of his head, it becomes, then he begins to, he's like falling down and he can't get up. Right? And then is expecting the woman to pick him up instead of getting himself up. Right?
Yeah. Yes. And, as I was joking about, it's the man's fault, but the man does set the tone. And that is something I talk to men about all the time is, I don't know what to do. She's, not doing this, not doing that. And it's like, well, she's responding to you. And I think that some men will bristle at that, and other men are like, oh, really? Oh, gosh, I'm so glad you said that. Because they're like, oh, well, then now I can do something about it. Because otherwise they feel very powerless, very helpless. And they'll shut down. They'll shut down to their wives, because they don't, because like you said, their wives they're like, oh, my wife isn't being supportive of me. She's not trying to help me. She's not trying to draw out my sexuality or draw out my sex drive. And it's like, wait. That's not her job. Her job is to be receptive to you. But at a certain point, women just stop being receptive, right? They close themselves off because, like I said, there's nothing to open up to. There's no masculine leadership there. And
Yes,
that's
and
what's needed.
yes, and going back to like we're talking about the attitudes towards relationships and male and female roles. This has a lot to do with it, right? Because when men or women are kind of taught to be, the same, women will be the ones to pursue men. And this was something I was listening to people talk about on X. They're like, men shouldn't be the ones to chase women. Well, you shouldn't chase and seem desperate, but man should be the one who pursues it. And I said, when a man is pursuing a woman, a lot of the things that he's doing to pursue her, if he's doing it right, she's not going to be aware of it because he's going to create the circumstances for this to get a certain outcome, but he should be doing it in a way to help build the relationship, not to take advantage, because it can be used like anything for good or bad. And a lot of men are using it for their own advantage. This is why they think that women are stupid, because they're like thinking that, oh, well, I'm just outsmarting her. It's like, no, you're not even playing the same game, right? And
Right, right. And for the single audience members out there, to clarify this, it's like the men should always be the one to initiate the dates. Like the very first, in the courtship, you should always be the one asking her out. But the way that you know whether or not you're chasing is she responding to you? Because if she is not responding to you, it is because she's not interested. A woman who is interested and a woman in love responds. She doesn't ghost you. She doesn't ignore you. She gets right back with you. That's how a woman who is interested behaves. So I just want to make that clear. So what chasing is if you're pursuing her and she's not getting back with you. When you ask her for a date, she's not available. And she doesn't provide any oh, I can't go on Saturday, but I'm available Sunday. That's a woman who's interested. A woman's like, oh no, I can't meet you. And then when you keep asking her out after that, that's chasing. Okay.
yes,
She should be responding to you.
yes, and sometimes women should, and because they're verbal, they should just sit down and say, I'm not interested. They like, I mean, just tell them, right? Like, if you say that,
Mm,
what are you saying?
I'm saying that is not feminine energy, though. For a woman to be so direct, usually women, the way that we communicate is by saying, oh no, I'm not available that night, and then not saying anything else. It's like, oh, okay. That's your answer right there, because a woman interested will offer alternatives. She'll use her words for that. And a lot of times women are covert communicators.
Yes, they are.
We respond, our response, no response is a response. That's what I'm saying. Now, I'm the kind of woman, I am a direct communicator. And so I would say, I'm finding that, I'm just not interested. Like I would, and it wasn't easy though, because I didn't want to hurt someone's feelings.
Yes,
So that's why I said, cause that's asking a lot of some women.
because a lot of these guys, they mean like the reason being is that we're kind of in muddy water, and normally, yes, I would say sit down and do this, but some of these guys, they don't get it. They don't, right? And they're unfortunately, because of, I mean, there's a long list of reasons, because we have women that are acting too masculine or trying to replicate what they think is too masculine, and they're men that they're try to get them to act more feminine, which is not the case and shouldn't. What needs to be done is that they kind of need to separate, but when they push them together, this creates more of this struggle, because you're all trying to do the same things in saying that, okay, we both fit in this little narrow path, and this is what we have to be, and then we're going to just fight because we're going to be thinking that the other person should be just like me, and they're not. Right? And then
Right.
it creates a problem. But I mean, I'm going to pull a clip up, because this is where this is one thing that I instructed my daughter, because when I was I always wanted to have a son first because I'm like, okay, you can look after your sisters if anybody messes with them, right? But then I had daughters first, and I was like, oh Jesus, I
Right.
I'm gonna have to rethink this one, right? Because I I'm a guy. I see what a lot of guys do, and I'm like, okay, so how do I prepare my daughter for this?
Right.
Right? So, and because I'm like, there's a lot of guys that are idiots, and there's a lot of good guys, but the idiots always try to come in and right, like watching this experience. So I'm like, okay, so I had to start laying a foundation. So we're gonna pull this clip up, and somebody's actually looking at a clip that my daughter talked about. So we'll pull it up.
Okay.
All right, let's load the first piece of media that we're going to use, and we'll kind of just listen to it, and then I'll give my feedback on what I think. So let's go.
My dad raised me to understand that men play chess and women play checkers, so that they have a completely different line of thinking than women do. And I didn't really used to like understand what he was talking about, but as I got older I did, and especially the last couple of years, I see in real time every day men creating circumstances for things that women don't see, whether it be positive or negative. And men are meant to do that, he said, because they are the leaders in the home, so they're supposed to create the circumstances for their family's success, and they do that by chess. And it happens completely unbeknownst to women because we just don't think in that way, and that's a good thing. Like, they have a very a strong ability to compartmentalize and so that they can keep going in difficult situations and hardships that chisel them rather than cripple women, right?
You know what? I actually agree with that, and I think what to take away from that mainly is that as a father or mother, maybe we do have to have conversations with our sons and daughters earlier, and they may not understand it at the time. They may not understand what you're talking about, but having those foundational conversations where you take them through a road of which they can see how a man thinks. 'Cause a lot of the time, men feel like we don't want to speak because we just lead by example, and we just think people are going to watch what we do and then copy, and then that's the job. Sometimes, especially in today's age, where there's so much other ways in which people can digest information. Maybe we are supposed to sit down with our daughters and say, listen, this is how a man's supposed to be, this is how we think, this is why we think that way, and that building that block early will help your daughters and the mother to a son as well, so that they're not simping. That, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with spending money on your woman and whatever, but make sure she's grateful, make sure she understands, and you have your priorities in place before you start doing that. Don't just, because any idiot can have money and just give money away, but you have to teach your daughters how to not fall for that trap of, even though he's just giving you money, what else does he do for you? Does he stimulate your mind, your body, your soul? It's those sort of conversations rather than just, oh, he bought me a bag, let me f*** him. Because if you do that, you're just a pussy he can move on to another person from. So you're just something he can just give you money, bang, next person give money, bang. But once you have substance, once you teach your daughters to be able to bring peace to a man, then it becomes a better lesson learned. And the same for men.
Yeah, so I ended up why I wanted to have a son first, because I understood would understand being a man, and I always wanted to have a boy and a girl because I wanted to understand the two different relationships. But I had a girl first, so and I watched my mother with my sisters and so forth, and watched women with their daughters, watch women with children. I knew I couldn't do that because I was around kids, and I don't process the information the same way. Women will read the feelings of a child and they need to please the child. And women who I want to please more is because they have to pacify babies. And women, it comes more natural to women than it does to men. And because you have that bond with a child and all that stuff. So for me, I had to study my daughter like nobody's business and watch everything that she did and how she reacted. And it taught me even to, like, I had to deal with my sisters and my mother and so forth. But it taught me to an even deeper level when I had a daughter that I had to raise on my own to figure out what I was doing. Because I'm like, like I'm like, I know I don't know how you think, because from she's little, she was doing stuff that made no sense to me, but I had to figure that out. So I had to take a very different approach. I guess God taught me a lesson. Thoughts?
um well said by both people, right? By the host and by your daughter. Yeah. Well, by the response clip. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting, what he said too is to teach your daughters that it's not to focus on the material, because just because a man is giving you things doesn't mean that he loves you. And then to the men, he was saying, don't just be giving women things if they're not showing some kind of gratitude or some kind of appreciation. So the caution there was, don't be superficial. Don't get so caught up in the superficial. And I think that, that's been a message that parents have had to tell their kids throughout all time. But I think that, like, what you told your daughter was so important these days. It wasn't something maybe that had to be said out loud maybe 100 years ago, 150 years ago, just because of the roles are so different now.
Yes. And
Women, we just saw examples of that all the time, of how, yeah, men are playing chess, women are playing checkers, and yeah, it's just different.
that's that's the whole point. It was just like, I'm not like you. And you're not like me, because she's like, well, I've tried to do what you're doing. I'm like, you're a girl. I get it. You're my child. You're looking up, and all you see is a father. But I'm like, you can't do what I do. I said, if you do that, you're going to drive yourself nuts, because I know that I can't do what women do. And if I try, I will just be miserable. So I'm like, you've got to figure it out. And I know that for example, my daughter, it took her 28 years for her to figure something out, because all I could do is put her in situations where she could figure out herself about being a woman, because I couldn't teach her, right? So I had to put her around certain situations and say, okay. And it took her 28 years, that if she had a mother that was there to tell her and explain her, she would have learned this a long time ago. But it's just because I can't teach her to be a woman. Like, I can't. But under having that foundation, knowing the differences between the two, is critical to not having this power struggle and this inside of relationships, right?
Well, yeah, and yeah, for sure. And so back, so I started coaching. Actually started coaching women when I was still working as an escort, and it was teaching. Basically, it was, these are the reasons why men cheat, and these are these are the things you can do to prevent it from happening. Because men would tell me why they were there with me instead of at home with their wives, where they belonged. And I was always so surprised, because it was so basic. It was such like bare bones decency to me. I thought, I was like, that's just part of marriage, is some of the things that they said they weren't getting from their wives. And a lot of it was sex. It was, I still find her very attractive. I don't care that she's gained, the extra 15, 20 pounds after having the baby. Who cares? She's the mother of my children. I love her. I'm so attracted to her, but she doesn't feel good about herself. So she has shut that part of our relationship off. That was the big thing that I was hearing from men. But what I was going to say is that, but for women, what they feel is the lack is of communication. Right? They don't feel heard. They don't feel seen. They don't feel like their feelings matter to men. And so it's again, women wanting men to act like women, and men wanting women to act like men. But I don't think it's like some horrible toxic thing. I think it just isn't recognized that way. I think if we could see it for what it was, then we go, oh, okay. All right. I
Yeah,
see.
I've got a question for you, but I got to take a short commercial break. You need to hear from the
Okay.
Pillow Man.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks. Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Yeah, so if you need any of the energy drinks or any of the MyPillow products, go to mypillow.com/Karis or call 800-845-2942. Promo code Karis. They got like bath stuff, they've got bed stuff, sheets, all that kind of stuff, kitchen stuff, and even slippers that are very comfortable. So go check it out. Support a good cause. So you were let's circle back in. You were talking about the things that they were saying that the women said that it was the communication issues that they were having, but they were not that they weren't feeling attractive. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, the women were saying that they didn't feel seen and heard by men, but women say that all the time. I mean, I could say that about me and my husband too. Right? It's just a male female thing, right? It's not that there's something wrong with our relationship, but because I know that it's not personal. It's because men literally get tunnel vision, right? Y'all, because when y'all are focused on something, you are focused on something. And so one of the things that, well, like if you're reading the paper or watching television or answering emails, your daughter could walk in and go, "Hey, Dad, da 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 da," ask you to do something. You're like, "Yeah, okay." And you didn't hear a dang thing she said, but you said, "Okay." I'm not saying you do that. Maybe you don't, but that happens all. My husband's like, "Yeah, okay." And so what I make sure that I do, and what I would coach women to do, is make sure that you have his attention. Say, "Honey, can I talk to you for a second?" "Yeah, sure. What's going on?" And only then do you start to have a conversation. Something so simple, right? And it relieves so much heartache. But just something like that builds up resentment over time. But it's because y'all don't communicate and take in information the same way that we do. Now, my husband could come in, excuse me, start talking to me. I could be talking to the phone, answering email, and having a conversation with him, and take it all in, filter it, and it would be fine. But y'all's brains do not work that way. Your brains are actually structurally different than a woman's brain.
Oh yes, because women process while they're talking and men do not. And like, I get to the point, like, especially like, just my daughter, ever since she was little, she'd come to me early in the morning or late at night. 2 worst times to actually have any type of substantial conversation with a man,
Right.
because it's like a bear coming out of hibernation, and at the end of the day, he's like, it's like his brain is leaking out of his ears, right? And so I understand that sometimes there are pressing things, but I will tell her, I'm like, you got to slow down. You got to let me think about what you just said, because I can't process as you're talking. I have to think about what you're saying as opposed to that. And so those types of things, and saying, well, that awareness will help to deal with those types of issues, right? Because if you say, "Hey, I want to hear what you say, but I can't process all of that, so you got to just give it to me in chunks," right? Because we're different, right? And sort of
Yes.
open the door for that, rather than like, "Oh, you can't never do this. You're always," like, no, she's different. And yeah.
It's like, you don't care about me. If you loved me, you would listen. If you loved me, you would know what I said. If you loved me, you would know exactly what I wanted. And I wrote a book like 12 years ago called How to Keep Your Man Out of My Bed. And it was like a tongue-in-cheek, title. And
Yes.
I talk about all this kind of stuff. I say, yeah, you cannot expect a man to read your mind. Some men can, not very many though. Some men can, and you have to stop wanting your husband to be your best girlfriend. He's not going to talk to you the same way, and you shouldn't expect him to, because, men who behave that way, guess what? They get put in the friend zone. Right? Women do not want to have hot romances or marry those men. They get put in the friend zone. So, yeah, it's, we want it both ways. But really, what we want is, we want to be seen, and we want to be heard, and we want to be, held in that masculine energy, because that is something that masculine energy, that grounded masculine energy really does, is it sees the feminine and it hears the feminine in its way, in a way where we feel that from you. And it just means we have your undivided attention in certain moments. It doesn't mean that you're going to completely understand everything that's going on. That's not required, right? We just need to feel you.
Yes. One thing I will say, that like when you get into the selection stage, some of the things that women look for are, I have to sit down and say, I'm like, you're letting men off too easy, and two, I mean, I would say that when I hear some of the things, 'cause when I listen to women that have ended up having like strong male presence, the things they look for are different, right? Because they
Mhm.
understand, like when they have a good relationship, say for example, with their father, and the father was very present and helped them to develop in certain areas, they're very different than girls who did not. Like if the father was absent, and it's worse if he was abusive, right? Like then
Mhm.
that matrix is decision making is out the window. But what a lot of men need to do for the women are never going to understand how they do it. They're just going to experience it. And my daughter always tells me that women have to experience things in the moment in order to learn and understand, where men, we don't. We think many steps ahead, because we have to think about, in order for us to protect our families, we have to think this way. We can't be experience some tragedy that blows our family to pieces. We have to be able to foresee those things so that we can keep them away from them, right? So, I'm
Yeah, from the danger. Yeah. And so that's what I was saying, is, we feel like we're being seen and heard, but it's just that masculine presence. Again, it's, understanding is not required, right? We don't need to be understood. We just need to feel held. I'm talking about energetically, of course,
yes,
physically too, but energetically. And because we have to feel that energetically from a man before we can surrender. And that's the piece that so many women feel is missing, is they feel like they're being ignored, and the only time that they're getting attention is when he wants to use her body for pleasure. That's how it can come across to a woman. It's like, oh yeah, he doesn't want to help with anything around the house. He doesn't take out the trash or do any of the things he said he would. And then when we go to bed, he wants to cozy up to me. Well, you can forget about it, buddy. And I teach women, I was like, look, those are two separate things. I understand why a woman would feel that way. How could I open myself up to this slob? But I understand, but it's learning that those are two separate things. Trading sex for chores is not a good way to go, because then you're just training a man to pay for sex one way or another.
you're women don't. I'm going to say this: when a man loves a woman, he is going to want to sleep with her constantly, because that
Right.
is how he shows affection, and he wants to bond with that woman, right? And that's the, a woman should feel good that a man desires her, and obviously a man has to also show restraint, because he's not supposed to use her like his personal slave. But it's
Mhm.
not the way it should go, because you have to have some restraint. But woman does not want to shut that down, right? Like they she, if she shuts that down, it will it will cause problems that makes it harder to recover because um, the worst damage that a man can ever receive is from his wife. There's nowhere else on planet Earth that can hurt him more than his wife.
Yeah, say more. I know what you I think I know what you mean, but
A,
say some more on that.
a man has to open himself up to the woman. She's going to act like a battery to him. A woman draws the most out of a man by coming in close to him. And some of that type of nurturing, she does it towards a husband in a manner that's appropriate to a grown man. And that will like energize him to do things that are not possible otherwise. But he has to allow that woman to come in and he has to become vulnerable to her. And that allows the opportunity for her to take advantage of, right? And so it if the man is getting rejected, he's going to start to close off
Mhm.
from her and pull away because in his mind is like this is becoming a conflict and it men see things very differently and when she's doing this and having that transactional nature it's like he's dealing with another man and he doesn't want to think like that in a certain way but eventually he's just going to shut down and say enough but he's not going to deal with it in the way that he would with a man because if a man was doing this kind of thing to him there would be one man left standing but he's like this is my wife it's a woman I'm not going to deal with that so we don't want to make that type of conflict in there, and then this is why he shuts himself down.
Well, yeah, because it becomes this, like you said, it's a meeting of the minds. It's this intellectual pursuit rather than this heart connection, right? And so that's, what a woman who is trading sex for chores, that's what she's done. She's made it a mental construct, right? That sex and love have become a concept rather than a real thing. And again, like we were talking about earlier, it's, the man is the leader in the relationship. So if the woman is withdrawing from him or, being grouchy or, I don't know, annoyed with him, irritated with him, it it's up to him to understand why or to figure out why or to take action on that. Because I'll tell you, um, a woman who is treating a man like that, she's doing it because she's not turned on by him. Something has happened
Y-
to
y-
where she's sexually turned off.
yes, I agree that the man should be the one to lead because the man is going to be able to see down the road in and from like because this is the way he's designed. He can see where this is trending if this behavior doesn't stop. A woman's more in the moment about her feelings and how she feels at the time, and a man can separate his feelings and look as to where this is going to go and say, I need to stop this. And so the man has to work in his area. The woman should try to acknowledge that that he is not like her. You might have all these feelings, but you have to remind yourself that your husband is not like you and your girlfriend, and understand that. You say, "I don't understand what you're doing," and there's no shame in saying that. Just say, "I don't know what you're doing. That doesn't make sense to me." Right? That's okay. But the man still has to be the one to set the tone, set the boundaries on where things are going. Because when a man throws up the hands in the air, that's where everything goes sideways. Because if the woman starts taking control, this is where things go badly very fast. When a woman takes control in a relationship, she doesn't respect the man. She can't.
Right, right. Well, because she's taken on the masculine role. If she's
Mm-hmm.
calling the shot, she's taking on the masculine role. And no woman that's in a healthy relationship, no healthy woman wants to be that, especially in the romantic department of the relationship. It doesn't mean that she doesn't initiate sometimes. It's not that, but just when you said that's a great image, the man throwing up his hands, and then now she's the masculine. Okay. She doesn't want that. Maybe she thought she did, but when she gets it, she doesn't want it. So I have a question for you, if I may ask.
Yeah.
So So many of the men that I talk to and coach, they have thrown up their hands. And so we talk about that, right? We talk
Hmm.
about that, oh, well, there's a masculine energy vacuum, coming from your side of the relationship. And what do you say about that? Like how because just from a man's perspective, it's so interesting to me that he's rejected by his wife. He wants to have sex with her. She said no. Not just once or twice, but this has gone on for 5 years. And he's staying in that marriage. But yet now he's stepping out. He's seeing sex workers, right? He's doing other things that violate his vows. But her not having sex is also a violation of the vows. What do you think is going on in the mind of a man that has just been like, oh, well, she doesn't want to have sex with me. I guess I'll just go someplace else.
It I'm gonna say that that is the wrong thing to do because it's going to take a bad situation and make it worse. And I know that this is very difficult to deal with. Like the woman starving the man from sex, like I mean, you could like smash him over the head with something. It would be he was like do anything else but that because that is how he wants to draw closer to you. And but the man should get up and do something to demonstrate that this is wrong. And he should, if he has to, if they're at the point where it's broken down, then get up and go and stay somewhere else for a little while and say we need to figure things out. And I need to separate here for a second. I'll stay at my brother's, whatever, so that I can sort things through because I want to be a good husband to you. I want you to be a good wife. But right now we're having some issues. But I said everything is fine, but I want to figure it out so that I'm not going to aggravate you. You're not going to aggravate me, and I don't want to have this breakdown because I want to fix this and let that know. It's better to do that because then when when he's away, then she'll start to think about the things that were there when he was there. And obviously, if they have kids, then they come and do stuff with the kids. But he has to do something to show that's the case. And I'm not saying that's like in an extreme case, but in whatever the situation is, he has to do something by his actions to say that that's not acceptable and that maybe you need to rethink what you're doing because I'm not afraid to do what needs to be done in order to, and if that means if you're do it, because if you have children, that is the worst thing that you can do to your children is put them in that situation. Right? And men that stay for the children while the children are being witnessing this, they're doing the children a disservice. Better that they separate, work on things, and come back together, because they'll be like, okay, my dad still loved my mother, but he got up and he separated so that they could have some better space for us and work on things and fix it and then come back, rather than staying there because they'll have no respect for their father for doing that.
Yeah, kids always seem to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they may not be able to put words to it, they know something's off and it doesn't feel right. And then that's an example of what they have for a relationship, because it creates this tone, this atmosphere in the home. And if you grow up in that kind of atmosphere, then just because of the way our brains work and patterning, then you're going to go out, you're going to think, oh, this is the way life is, and this is what I'm supposed to have. And then you go, whether you want to or not, and then you replicate that yucky situation with its tense and loveless and whatever else is going on there. That the kids they pick up on things and they make up things too.
Yes. We're going to get into this a little bit deeper. We have to take a short break. I mean, if you're watching on the LTV, it'll be the next day, but we're going to take a short break here. I'll close this segment here with prayer. When we'll come back, we're going to dig deeper into this because what we're the understanding of the power dynamic, it starts from when you're young and what you witness and how this is done. And so the parents lay the foundation, and when they see that, that's important for them to teach the children on the right ways to deal with it and the wrong ways. Not saying even if you had a bad situation, it's not impossible to fix. It's harder, but you're just gonna have to put in more work. That's just really the way it is. And as a man, time to buck up. All right, I'll close here with the prayer, and then we'll take a short break and be right back. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you have given us and the knowledge that we're discussing, and help someone that they would be able to learn from this and start asking questions, that people can start rebuilding their families, and that the men can take the leadership roles and help the women, and most of all, help the children, that they would have some security and love and protection in their homes is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, so we will see you guys on the live stream in a few minutes. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Keisha here, and today I am here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin.
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking, and here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the CARES Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: a house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city house or state without permission or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the CARES Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the CARES Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations. And thank you for all the support. And we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CARES Project podcast. And we're doing episode 3 of Divergent Discussions, and we were talking about the power dynamic, which, I mean, yes, it's something that needs to be discussed. You want to kind of give some thoughts again? I'll pick on you, his ladies first. on
Thanks.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That last segment, we talked about so many different things. We went in some directions that I wasn't really expecting, but we're talking about the dynamics of a low sex, no sex marriage is a little bit about power and about men wanting women to act like men and women wanting men to act like women. I think I said that right. And because of that, nobody's getting what they want. And we are trying to bring some common sense into this and some sanity to help everyone understand that men and women are very different. And it's an amazing thing. It's wonderful. And instead of trying to make each other the same and being angry and frustrated because, women aren't acting like men and men aren't acting like women, that we need to understand that there's a difference there because that's the way that we were created, and it's beautiful. And instead of fighting it, acknowledging it, celebrating it, having fun with it. And that can help us all have better marriages, right? And just have more harmonious lives in general.
I agree. And one of the things is that when you have this kind of power dynamic and the issues like we were talking about, you begin to see that the relationship becomes transactional in nature. This is extremely bad for men to see this. Men, and women that are doing this, I ask you not to do this. Do what you need to do, because when it becomes transactional in nature, you're teaching a man to objectify a woman. You're teaching a man, and you're, like you said, you're correct. You're teaching him to go out and get a sex worker. You're conditioning him to do this, and he's valuing you is diminishing, and this is not what you want to do. And if you're doing this in the household and you have children, this is being reinforced to them, which is very bad. Which is why we want to deal with these issues, because they have unintended consequences, and the children are the ones who pick up on this, and they suffer the most, right?
Yeah, because whether we like it or not, whatever the tone of our household was growing up, that becomes our default emotional set point. I can't think of another way to put that, but that's what's happening, is we're just used to feeling a certain way in a relationship. And so we may have these really great relationships with friends. We may have an incredible relationship with coworkers and with our bosses, and even with our moms, our dads, our brothers, our sisters. But then when it comes to that romantic partner, we automatically revert back to our childhood, and we recreate that dynamic that was going on in the household. And it's not because there's something wrong with us, or because we're broken, or because we're wounded. It's because that's what our brains do. Our brains want to know two things. Is it safe, or is it dangerous? And to our brain, safe means known, and dangerous means unfamiliar. And that's why it's so hard to break a habit. That's why it's so hard to choose a really great partner if you grew up in a household where the tone was poor. There was just all kinds of, whether it was, even if it wasn't abusive, it doesn't have to be physical abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse. It could be that your parents never talked to each other, never argued. There was no affection, no closeness, no connection, no intimacy, no emotion. That's just as damaging. And it doesn't mean that you can't overcome these things and have a great relationship. Even if you're married right now and things aren't going the way you want it to, it doesn't mean that it can't get better. It doesn't mean you can't fix this. Because a lot of times, once you have understanding and then you're willing to work on it, then you can move forward. So I love talking about this because it's a message of hope. Yeah, maybe you haven't had sex in 5 years, but it doesn't mean that you can't turn that around. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Okay, let's not pretend it's going to be easy, but it can be done. You have to want to do it and be willing to put in the work and be vulnerable. Both parties, right?
Yeah.
Both parties have to be vulnerable.
Yes. Yes. In different ways, but yes, they have to be vulnerable, because in doing that, you're going to gain strength. You can never have the most out of a relationship holding back. If you hold back, it will show. And when women hold back from men, they understand this. Unless they're completely overwhelmed with other things, men will instinctively know this. We're designed to, because we're the ones who are there to fix problems. When a man throws his hands up in the air, he shows the woman by his actions that he can't solve the problem, and she thinks it's hopeless. And that's what it transmits to her. And then she's going to respond in kind. This is why the man, when it comes down to fixing a lot of the situations, more of the onus is on the man, because the man is the one who sets the tone for the entire household, right? The man should be the one to settle the woman down when she's losing her mind if there's some kind of problem, and be able to be calmer in that situation. What's happening is they're trying to have a push to have the men not have the same challenges to go through, in order for them to face that and learn these things and develop them more. And sometimes the men have to have bad circumstances. And that's just the way it is. Because, I mean, as guys growing up, we did a lot of stupid things, and we had to learn the hard way. But we learned them when we were kids, so we didn't learn super hard when we were adults. Or like now, I can't imagine learning the stuff that I did when I was 15 right? Like, I mean, that would that would be catastrophic, right? So
Yeah, yeah, it could be because it could be very self-destructive.
yes, and so kind of circling back there, where like, I mean, when you talked about how to teach women how to keep men men out of your bed, right? Like, I mean, when I was younger, I dated a couple of sex workers. My oldest daughter, her mother was one, and that relationship was, I mean, it wasn't great, but we had a kid, and so I had to deal with that, navigate that. But then I came to a point where I just had to set some boundaries and just say this is the way it is, and so forth. Because I am kind, that doesn't mean that I'm weak. And when I look
Mhm.
at situations for a child, I will bend more to help the child because I'm like, I don't care if I hated everything that you did. I'm not going to let my hatred to whatever it is that you did override the love to my child. Right. And so there's that type of thing where I'm not going to be like, well, oh, you did this, so you can't ever talk to your kid. I let my daughter talk to the kid. Obviously, I limited in certain situations because she had some other issues where she wasn't able to deal with that. But I wanted to make sure my daughter had access and understood so that she could make a decision for herself without me influencing. Because the one thing I can't stand is using the children as pawns, which sometimes ends up happening when that power struggle comes in the home because somebody's not feeling this way and that way, and then they begin to get resentful towards each other. And so we want to get people to shift away from doing that. And the men, since you're the problem solvers, well, you got to start thinking solutions, right?
Yeah, yeah. I had some, listening to you talk here, I wanted to bring something up to you. I hope it's not getting us too far off track, but one of the reasons that men will tell me that they haven't done the thing where they're like, okay, hun, I'm going to go and stay with my brother, or I'm going to go stay in a hotel, and I'm just so that we can both have some space to clear the air here. I need to go do some thinking, that kind of thing. Um, they aren't even willing to do that. They will just stay in that marriage, not get what they want, not have sex, not have the closeness, not have that intimacy, being able to enjoy reveling in that feminine energy, not be the masculine leader in their relationship either. But they stay and they say, oh, because of the money. If I started this company after we were married, I'm in a community property state. After I leave, or if I leave, she gets half of it. And then neither one of us will have that much. If I have to give her half the company, then neither one of us have that much. Or they're going to have to sell the family home. We're going to have to do this, going to have to do that. And I feel like, as a woman, it's hard for me to say, well, you're hiding behind your money, but I'm inclined to feel that way because what's more important?
Well,
What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to tell you right now that if you're a man and you're being held by money, then you need to reevaluate what you're doing because a man has to be there for principle, right? And you have to be the one to set the boundaries and set the standards. And if you need to protect your family, that means sometimes you might have to forego your money. If you have to do what's right and so forth, because I'll tell you right now, money can't change the upbringing that your children have. You can't, right? And your children, your family should be the most important things to you. Like this should be the order. God, your wife, your children. Because if your wife isn't looked after, she's not going to be able to help look after your children. So if your
Mhm.
wife's needs aren't met, then she can't properly take care of the children because she's not operating at her best. So you have to make a decision on what's best. And if you have children, you're investing in your future more than your company. And if you lose your money, so be it. Money can always be, you can always gain money back. You can't undo the damage that were done to your family. You can't. So you got to prioritize that first.
So I look at it as an excuse to take action. Because they've abdicated their masculine role. And I'm not saying these are bad people. They're not. They're hurting. They're confused. They're lost.
A lot of them actually have not been taught. And the way, like I said, and we'll have to go in and unpack this about the sexual revolution and all of those different factors of what they did, but our society fundamentally shifted, especially to a large degree after World War II, which allowed this whole foundation for the sexual revolution, which changed the dynamic in which we did, and we started to have some very unnatural things take place, and the roles of men changed, right? And it was much easier to do by getting a whole generation of men fighting in a traumatic experience than having to come back. And then how many successive wars did they have after that? Right. And
Yeah.
so this was part of the catalyst. So now we're seeing men that are not being able to do what men do, because men create the greatest thing that a man does is that he creates the circumstances for his family's success. He's like, okay, think about, if you know about hockey, Wayne Gretzky, he was like the great hockey player. He's a little guy, but you know what he did? He made everybody around him better. That's what the father does in his family. He makes everybody, he pulls out the best in everyone, starting with his wife and then his children. That is the thing that men do that are irreplaceable. This is why men can never be replaced. Just like women, they give birth, they do the nurturing, they can't be replaced. Those roles of the mother and father are irreplaceable. So, and there's other things, obviously, with the mother, but these are the very obvious things. So, knowing that they have things that are irreplaceable, they have to work together. So, if your focus has to be doing that, because especially if you're a Christian, the image of God is reflected in mankind in a successful family. If you go back to creation, what did God do after you married and said, be fruitful and multiply? He was like, go have sex with your wife and make more of yourselves. The image of God was complete. So then he rested. He was done. So if we don't have that working, you'll never get to where you need to be as a human being without having that type of relationship. You're just not. You're going to be a shadow of yourself. Sure, some people can do this, but you're going to get the most out of people when they are in stable relationship. And obviously we're not perfect, but we can rebuild things. It's not impossible. You can't sit down and say, well, my life is too bad. Well, sorry, no, that's not the way it is. If you want to go in and put in the work, it's achievable for anybody.
So as you were talking, I was thinking of, excuse me, I was thinking of an episode I did on my channel, my YouTube channel. It was choose masculine leadership or an open relationship. I don't know if we're getting off topic or not. Can we
go ahead.
This? Okay.
Yes.
Because here's what I've been encountering, not often, but sometimes in coaching calls, is a man will say to me, I don't want to protect, provide, or procreate. I've done that. And now I'm divorced. My kids are grown. I don't want to do anything to do with any of that. What I'd like to do is have 2 or 3 women that I have in rotation that know about each other, and we are involved in a sexual relationship. And that's what I want. I am done with all of it. I don't want to live with anybody. I just want to have these dalliances, but I want to be open about it. I don't want to lie to anybody. I'm not trying to trick anybody, but that's what I want.
I
And
I
I'm like, oh, okay, you
I,
can have that. They can have that if they want,
I
but they're
mean,
going to give up a lot.
yes, and like I mean, I was in. I mean, I hadn't had a lot of like relationships because in certain times of my life, I was just like, no, I don't want to have a relationship. But I have dealt with situations where that you would deal with multiple women, and it was a waste of time. And I stopped because I said I don't have the energy to effectively deal with these women, and this is pointless. Like I mean, it's actually self-destructive to me. And I began to realize this. And as I got older, I began to see the more and more the effects of this. Because everything that we do has there's a consequence, good and bad. How good the consequence is, a lot of the times is not worth the negative side of it. Right? So getting that immediate pleasure of having a bunch of, because let's be real, like I like women. Like I mean I had not have a ridiculously high sex drive, but that doesn't mean that I should go out and fulfill it. When I actually have more control over it and can direct it towards a woman, then I can use it and that focus on her to draw things out to help, because women will become more sexually active the more that they're emotionally fulfilled, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you want to have somebody that's somewhat compatible, like, or somebody that doesn't have any some like I mean some type of or like physical or something wrong with them, like physically, that they can't continue to do this. That would be an incompatibility. But you also have to show restraint, because I'm not going to sit there. I can't spend my entire life sleeping with women as a man. It will take away from what I need to do, right? Because when you sit down and see that men that chase women and spend an inordinate amount of time doing this, you see it translate into other areas of their life. As men, we can't do that. We cannot do that. We won't be as productive as men.
So, say there are people out there listening in the audience and they're like, oh man, but it just sounds so fun. It seems like it would just be heaven, and there would be, I would have all this freedom, and I would have all my desires fulfilled, and then I could just sleep in a bed by myself and do whatever I want, and spend my money my way, not have anybody telling me what to do. Nah, 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 nah. So for a man who hasn't had those opportunities, what do you say about that? Because, okay, so I heard you say, it takes up so much energy and so much time, and then you're not able to do other things.
You,
Like,
you
how does that translate, like, to a man who's like, oh, really? Come on.
okay? You have only so much time and resources to allot to things in life. We have a finite existence. We have 24 hours in a day. Now, when you're chasing someone, say if you're spending half of your day, 8 hours a day chasing women, so you work the other 8 hours. Well, what do you have left for other areas of your life? Right?
Yeah, right. Unless you give up sleep. Yeah, exactly. Well, you're not going to be a productive citizen. You're not creating anything. You're not contributing anything.
No, and men, we go out and we create the infrastructure in the world that we live in and maintain it. If you have a bunch of men going around chasing women instead of creating the infrastructure, what happens to the world?
Mhm.
Right.
Right. Well, in countries where testosterone is allowed to run rampant, where, I'll just put it that way, where testosterone is allowed to run rampant, they don't have the infrastructure in the cities and the culture and the art that we do. If you think about that, because there's no check on that, because testosterone is actually so creative, right? And that is why we have roads and cities and libraries and museums, is because of testosterone. Like, I believe that 100%. And if you're just allowed to go out and fulfill the very, like, what is the word, like the very tiniest part of what your sex drive actually is, and that sexual energy actually is for, then yeah, we're gonna live in mud huts.
You can go ahead and follow your penis or you can use your brain. Your your higher judgment centers, your judgment and reason has to overcome any of your lower passion. Sexual urges are not where your judgment and reason centers are. They're not. So your judgment and reason has to override and say, okay, yes, I feel like I could rip through 50 women, but is that reasonable? What is that going to do for what I want? And if I have, for example, children or in a family, should I go after 50 women? No. Right? If I want to have children, maybe I should, like having a bunch of children with 50 women is just going to compound your headaches. Like I watch guys that did this and had a bunch of children with a bunch of women, and I'm like, I don't want your life. Sorry. Like that's too much headaches. That is way too much headaches. Right? So at what cost? That's what people have to begin, not think about right now. Because if you think about just the here and now, rather than what's going to happen in the long term, you're operating no different than a drug addict. Especially if it's worse, way worse for a man than it is for a woman.
Sure. Well, y'all's drive starts so early. So early. And I raised two sons, and I remember we would have conversations about that, and they were always just blown away by, I didn't even do anything. And here it is, and I would just talk to them and explain that's totally, that's part of nature, that will, as you mature, that you'll get all that under control. They were just felt a little bit worried, like, is there something wrong with me because this happened? It's like, no, you're fine.
We're gonna take a short commercial break, and I'm gonna come back, and we're gonna, like what you just mentioned, I'm gonna bring a clip up that addresses this. All right.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day, and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
All right, so if you go to mypillow.com/cares, you can get any of the MyPillow products. I mean, if you want the energy drinks, they have pillows, bed stuff, bash. Why do you keep saying bash sheets? Like, come on, like that's not. Yes, bath stuff, bed sheets, and kitchen stuff. I mean, that doesn't come natural to me. I ain't gonna lie. But go ahead, check it out, and you can use the promo code CARES or call 800-845-2942. So, since we talked about the multiple partners and so forth, and I'll let, I'm going to pick on Myron again.
Okay.
He talks about how many women men should sleep with before they settle down.
I have a very practical reason as to why I tell guys to hook up with 50 girls before they decide to take the plunge and get married, even though I don't think they should get married in the first place, is I want them to have a body of work to understand female nature and know what they're getting themselves into, and to be able to identify all the deceptive traits, phrases, actions, and behaviors that a lot of women will employ to go ahead and garner some type of long-term commitment from a man, where that long-term commitment puts that man in a compromising situation. What I tell guys is to play from a position where you understand female nature, so you know what's coming at you, okay?
I mean, no. No. But he actually said it. He goes, I'm not even recommending that they get married. Right?
Right. I don't know how you're going to learn about female nature if you're sleeping with 50 women, because how I mean, how old is he? What's he talking about? Because how do you have time to get to know women if you're going from woman to woman to woman? Because all women aren't the same. I mean, I know we're talking about masculine energy and feminine energy, but he didn't say that. He said manipulative traits and da da da. So I guess he's assuming that women that will have sex with him are like a low quality, low character a person. So perhaps he needs to look to himself.
Well, okay. Like, I mean, this is what happens. Like, I used to go in clubs and stuff like that when I was younger, and I saw a lot of stuff. I saw a lot of people do stuff. I mean, I did dumb stuff, and I saw people do things to the nth degree, and I was like, okay, I can learn from your stupidity and not do that, right? And all it was in that lifestyle, it was always people cheating on other people, and it was just all of that stuff. And so you're going out in those places, and people that are out on drunken benders, and you hook up and all of these things, and then you expect to go in and settle down when people are in that phase where they just want to party their faces off and just live fast and loose, for lack of a better term, and then expect that you're going to go and find that wholesome person in that situation who's in that mindset. That's absurd, right? It's really not. Like, if they're in that moment and you think that you're going to go and settle down and have a relationship, and you're still doing the same thing as well, it's not going to work.
It's cheap thrills. I mean, because what does he think the purpose of a relationship is? What does he think the purpose of marriage is? He acts like it is not a win-win, as if women just want a commitment from anyone. As if it's yeah, please.
No, go ahead. Finish what you're going to say.
Yeah, no, that was it. Just want a commitment from anyone, not like that special someone. It's like, that's not how feminine energy operates. Maybe in these modern times, perhaps that's what he's talking about. I don't know.
But this is sorry. This is what.
No, it's like, no, please go.
I'm gonna pull up another clip. This is kind of the type of women that they're putting on the other side to justify what they're doing, and just, you'll see.
Would you guys cheat for $100?
Would I cheat for? All right. Is that real?
No, it's real.
Probably, yeah.
You're for real?
I'm being for real.
Why?
I mean, it's a hundred. Is 100. You know.
To cheat?
To cheat. Dude, you're not marrying the guy.
How do you know?
You're not marrying him. Obviously, if you want to cheat, that means you're not marrying him.
No.
I think
Loyalty
so.
over everything.
Oh.
All right. Thanks.
You want to cheat then?
Should I? Right now.
Yeah.
First guy, pick him out.
No, you can't do that.
Do you want to?
I like that.
I'm being for real. You just gave me 100.
You're being for real?
Yeah, you gave me 100. I'm being
You're not
for
gonna
real.
see what this means. Hell no.
So this is the type of stuff that they like. These are the kinds of girls that they're bringing in and talking about. And if you have a mindset of a man, like the way that is, that you need to sleep with 50 women, these are the kinds of girls that you're going to be going to go and just get somebody to give it up to you all the time, right? So, well, what do you expect, right? Like, so you're going to have a negative outlook on women, and women are going to have a negative outlook on men because of the choice. These are consequences for the choices that they make, right? Because if you want to live that way, and then you're going to say, okay, I want to get a man in that environment, or a man says, I want to get a woman in that kind of environment, unless they're really serious about doing something, you're going to just have more misery.
Yeah, I'm still just stunned by that clip we just saw.
Yeah.
I'm just because it's like, come on, $100? Seriously?
I mean,
even $1,000. I'm just saying, yeah.
But you remember talking about that sort of thrill seeking.
Yeah, cheap thrills. Yeah.
Yes, like I mean, my daughter and we discussed this on a podcast a while ago. Saw a clip of there was a girl getting literally a train ran on her. Both men and women are having their phones out, videotaping this in the parking lot of some place publicly, and I was mind blown that that was happening. Like these are like college students, right? Why would you do that? Like, like, why would you do that in a public place like that? And then th- this is where,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I know you're just like, "Ah," you're like, I don't even have words for this.
Th-
Yeah, it's, I don't think that anybody participating in that is really wanting that. So I have a problem with that. Like, why didn't somebody call the police? Why didn't somebody try to stop it? It's like that's not normal human behavior on anyone's part. So I don't know that's the part that's disturbing
They were all
to
very
me.
intoxicated,
Yeah.
which I mean, but that's indicative of where our society is going. This is why it's important to go in and fix this, because the younger generation, when they learn these types of behaviors, or they're not seeing the love, because sex is no longer being associated with love. It's being associated with anything to make them feel good.
Mhm.
And it's disconnecting it in a manner that even when I even talk to a lot of, for example, like listen, some of the women that were working in porn or different sex, they see a shift. And me being older, when I see in my generation this, well, I mean, first of all, there was no internet, right? And then the access
Right.
of what kids are being exposed to, because it doesn't necessarily have to be in your home, right? And the way our life is fundamentally changing. This is why it goes back to men have to start making the harder decision to prioritize their families, because things are being changed so that we are driven more and more to be away from our homes, become more miserable. The women are miserable because the men are not doing what they're doing. They're left abandoned and everything else. Like the man comes in after his day of work and he just wants to come in and bam, thank you, ma'am, and go back to bed and get up and go back to work. Right?
Right. If he even wants to do that because he's just tired.
Yes.
You know, the I mean, of course we could go off on this tangent because I'm big on this is the crappy American diet. Just
Yes.
absolute garbage that people eat and were, I've been told it was food. I was not raised that way. My mom made everything from scratch. We always had an organic garden. And so I was raised that food is medicine. And I mean, I have to have blood coming out of my eyes before I'll go to see a doctor. Like to me, that's just not the way that you handle things. Unfortunately, I've never really been sick or had anything really, um, any kind of real health challenge. So, but I think it's because of the way I was raised, just being, super healthy, super health food all the time. And, but so there's that too. So that kills sex drive. They say men's testosterone rates are lower. I mean, I know that this is like a different topic, but it's kind of, another reason for what we're talking about is like, why would a man abdicate his natural leadership role? Like that's how y'all are. That's what you do. It's part of your being.
You actually said something very important there. That lowering testosterone rates is something. This is why a lot of women want younger men, because men are not demonstrating the male type of thing because of the lower testosterone. Because
Mhm.
like I look at some of the men, and I'm just like I get irritated, and I understand what's happening with the younger ones, because the challenges that were necessary for the men, they're taking them out of society. They are.
Mhm.
They're putting this push to make us like we're the same, and that's ripping apart the fabric of society. We need men to be men and women to be women, but the people that are going to have to fix this, these are the men. Like there's no other way to do it. Women are not going to fix the problems that were created by men. They're just not.
Well, as much as we women like to think so, we're not going to fix men. As much as we want to try, we're not going to be able to fix anyone but ourselves. And I feel like there's so many distractions, and it just goes back to it's a cultural thing, that we have so many distractions. We're being pulled in so many different directions, and sometimes people are just tired and just want to take the easy way, the easy route. We're going to have some fast food. We're going to sit in front of the TV or in front of our phones and get our dopamine that way instead of actually having to earn it. Like getting satisfaction out of long-term planning. And, I know this art project I've been working on, or, painting a wall, stenciling, like the stencil walls in my home. I mean, that takes days, but I get such a charge out of it. And I can go for hours and hours and hours and hours without a break doing it because I just love it so much.
Yes. And this is, you said something that was actually very key, and take a little time to unpack this, because men, especially men, we are wired to value what we work for. And the most fulfilling things in life come through hard work. And so if a man invests a lot of time in something, he treasures it. He doesn't care about the money that it costs. If he invested a lot of time in something, he will value it. So who should a man be investing the most in? His wife and his children. Because if he's not investing the most in his wife and his children, then he has to ask himself, what is he doing? Because when a man looks for a woman, yes, the beauty comes in and it becomes something that attracts him. But a man has to look at a woman. He looks at, what does she bring to the table? But it's not what he has. It has to be something that complements him. And then he then looks at her and sees not just where she's at. And this is what makes men very dangerous when they do this for the wrong reason. A man doesn't look at what a woman is. He looks at what she can become. Women are, throughout my whole life, I've watched them. Women are like the biggest underachievers I've ever seen in my life. They walk around and they don't realize the potential that they have. And if I had hair, it'd make me want to pull it out. Like, seriously, and the more intelligent a woman is, the harder it is for her to see her own potential. It is, but that's because we were designed to work together. And so that man can be able to sit down and say, I can help draw this out of this woman because he understands what his role is to do. And as he does this for his wife, he's going to learn how to do it for his children. Right? And this is the way that we're supposed to work. And as he does that, then the woman will respond in kind and then will then start pouring into him. But he has to be the one to initiate it because he's given that ability to see things in a way that the woman is not. She's designed to see something that he doesn't see very well, but it's not the same.
It's not the same, and in many ways it's indefinable, because I don't even know. I mean, it's indefinable to me, and I don't even know that it's important to define it as much as it is to experience it. Just to be that, and be that together with each other. Because as you talk like this, I reflect on my relationship with my husband, and there's so many things that go on between us that I don't even think about. Like, it just doesn't even occur to me. It's just our way of being and our way of being together. And then since you and I've met and started talking, I'm seeing many of the things, the positive things, fortunately, that you're saying reflected in our relationship, but I still can't name it. It's just the quality. It's just quality. It's like, oh, this is nice. This is wonderful. It's amazing.
Once you experience it, and I tell you, then you can relate it to something that you've experienced.
Yes.
And this is what is fundamentally different with the women when it comes down to that, because Men can see those things, project those things. Women need to experience them for them to understand it. And this is why men have to lead in that manner, right? And like, for example, like going back, this is where it's one of the things that bothers me. And I've talked to my daughter about this because of her experience, and this made me begin to pay attention a lot more to something that I realized. The most successful sex workers, they're very smart women,
Mhm.
right? But then
Yes.
but a lot of them got in there because there's some guy that did something, saw something, knew that they couldn't get what they wanted, so they kept her down at this situation. Because a man, if he feels that he can't keep that woman, he'll try to keep her down so that he can do this, and it's going to do wrong things to women because women need to feel a certain way, and a lot of it's how they're feeling on how they view themselves. So then you get a lot of the smart women that go in and do these things. And then you have the guys there that are like going after the women that are doing this. Some of those women don't have kids, or they become abused and don't know how to deal with things other than not abuse. The children are raised in abuse, or they don't have children. What ends up happening? They're not meeting with the right people to create the leaders, because the smarter people, they're the ones who create leaders. So you have less and less of that happen. And that drives me nuts, because when I see this, it's like, well, this seems like it's almost like a design, because you're seeing I see a lot of the women that are doing this. I'm like, you guys should be out there with men building empires and changing the world. Like, in feminism has said, okay, well, your sexuality is the way that you need to go. And there's nothing wrong with sex. Sex is made for people for enjoyment. But when that becomes your commodity, it devalues what a woman can do. A woman can do a lot more than that. And in fact, it's like, and then appealing to the sexuality also helps to weaken men, because the more that men have access to that, and that's the easy way to snare a man, then they spend more time doing that instead of building the infrastructure in the world.
I agree with you. And because of my background as a sex worker and as a madam, I saw it from all sides. I got to really know clients on a different level, because when I was running my brothel, we called it a modeling studio. The men, I didn't see any clients. But I mean, I was the madam, right? I was running
Yeah,
things. So
yeah.
I was saying I would talk to the clients. And so I got to hear more and learn more about their perspective of things, and more about why they were indulging in such things. And it was really interesting. It was really interesting to see that perspective, and to see how they felt about the women, or the things that they would tell me about the women. And then some of those women, where they came from. And many of those women had boyfriends, and it was kind of the boyfriend's idea that they do this. And I was always like, that just makes no sense to me. It's like, that man does not love you. He
No, he
does
doesn't.
not care about you
He does
at
not.
all, at all, at all, at all. And I think it's a little different when you're already doing it, and then you meet a man and you're dating, and he's like, okay, this is kind of fun. This is kind of wild. And then after, about 6 weeks or so, he's like, I can't see you anymore, because I have feelings for you, and this drives me crazy.
Yes, he's gonna want to
And
pull. He's gonna want to pull you out.
mm-hmm.
And women are like, well, oh, I just I need to make the money. It's like, no, because if a man loves a woman, he's not gonna want to share her. He's
He's
not.
not. No, right, wrong. I don't care what century it is. I try to explain that to people, and people think, oh, that's regressive. It's like, no, it's not. It's real. It's reality. Any man that thinks that's okay is playing a game with himself or with her.
But also, some of the men that do this, they see the value in the women that the women don't see in themselves. Like, I look at some of these women that, like, they're absolutely brilliant, and like, I'm like, with the knowledge that they have, they can do a lot of good. and some of them I talk to, and I'm like, there's things that they're doing. I'm like, I support that because I understand what's going on and what you're doing, which is good. But a lot of them that are not doing this and they have no clue, they, I'm like, that's such a waste of your brilliance. Like, you could go and have sex whenever you want, but you could also be doing things that you're going to leave your legacy, a greater legacy that people will remember you for.
Yeah, and I know the trap that some women get into is they're like, "Oh, I did this, and now I have to hide. I have to hide because I did this." Even if they don't feel bad about what they did, it's the repercussions, the societal repercussions that they're afraid of. And of course, for me, coming out and just being like, hey, everybody, guess what I did? It was never that I had this feeling of pride about what I did, but it was like I learned so much. If I hadn't learned the things I learned, I never would have, you know, come out and said, hey, this is what I did. Aren't I cool or edgy or whatever? People who kind of come out and they want to be entertaining about it. It's like, no, it's like I actually learned something very shocking and very surprising. And that was that men who cheat love their wives. They're just misled. They're just making a bad decision because they're afraid to make a good one, because the
Yes,
good one has high stakes.
we should actually have this conversation more in depth because I think that this is something that really needs to be done with the amount, not even just because even girls that are doing what we saw there and all of these other things that you're seeing that's coming online, it doesn't even matter if, at this point, because a lot of people are doing very sexually. I mean, I mean, you saw what the girl did, right? She wasn't a sex worker; she was just a regular girl. But now that's immortalized on the internet, and how they come back
Mm,
from this, right? And even that
so
man,
embarrassing.
because now they're doing things that they're doing things for the rush of the moment, but they're not
Mm.
looking at the consequences. Because that guy to do that that's just way off base. And like, I mean, some imagine the girl's boyfriend watching that, right?
I was thinking about her parents
That too, right? Like,
or or her job,
this is
school. I know. I was thinking about that. Like, oh man. And that's why I was wondering if it was real.
regardless of whether it is or not, it's sending a bad message, and it's going to get
Yes, for
people
sure.
to do things because people are impressionable and so forth. Like, look at that when they were doing that Tide Pod challenge where people were eating Tide Pods. Like, I mean, that's ridiculous, and people were like, they were getting killed and sick and things like that. It was, or they would go in there and they would chug a whole quart of whiskey or whatever, and some people were dying. Yeah,
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard about that. Oh,
that
alcohol poisoning.
this was like years ago, but I mean, this is the type of things that we're seeing on the internet, right? And so we're running up on time here, but I mean, we're going to go ahead and have these conversations again. So it was great talking with you again, and I'll close here with a prayer, and then I'll give you some final words before we kind of end off here. But we really need to have more of these conversations. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you have given us this day. And I hope that the men and women can come together and that they would humble themselves before God and fix their relationships, and that the older ones can help work with the younger ones to teach them how to rebuild families, relationships, community, churches, and our nation, and that the children would be able to have a semblance of a normal life is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. So, final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, this was a fantastic conversation. I feel like although we talked about so many things, there are so many other things that we could talk about and get more in depth. Because anytime you brought up something, it brought up 10 other things that I was like that I wanted to really get in depth and talk about. But I appreciate your having me on, and I love having these conversations, and I'm looking forward to more.
Yes, we will have more, and we will see everybody again soon.